spent 2 days making this top and I want to try it on for the very first time with you guys. Let's go try it on. It's actually so cute. I was kind of worried that I'd have to scrap the entire video, but I'm so relieved because it's turned out so well. This is my first time trying it and I'm so happy that the fit is really nice. Hi, I'm Mahum and I crochet cute things. I'm about to step outside in 50-degree weather to take pictures of this top, but before I do, please don't skip this part of the video because I'm going to go over some important things you need to know before you start crocheting this top. So like I said before, this top is made to measure, so you can make it the perfect size for you specifically, but I am going to give you my measurements and exactly what row and stitch count I did so that you can use that as an example to make your top. Because there's so many customizations you can make, this video is very talking heavy. So it might get a little bit annoying when I'm just talking, but please don't skip the demonstrations, don't skip the explanations, because that's where I really show you how to make your customizations. I also wanted to make sure that this was really in-depth, so if you're a beginner or if you're an advanced beginner, intermediate beginner, you'll be able to crochet along with me as well. So this could be your very first top if you never crocheted a top before. But if you're an intermediate crocheter who's done a lot of different projects and you're ready to move on to the next level, there is a written pattern in the video's description, so you can just use that to follow along and just watch the demonstrations wherever you need to. For this project, I recommend using a 3.5 or 4mm hook and nothing larger than that, because this does have a mesh texture. So if you use a larger hook, the texture is going to be really chunky. Unless that's the look that you're going for, then you can definitely use a bigger size hook. So again, since this top is made to measure, the hook and yarn size won't make much of a difference because you can always adjust it to make it the perfect size. I used a 3.5mm hook with a yarn that's linked on my Amazon storefront. I highly recommend it. It is 100% acrylic yarn and it's medium weight, but it has a really soft feel to it and it's a little bit shiny too. I don't know if it shows up in the video, but it's really pretty and it has a nice texture to it. I think I used about 300 to 250 to 300 grams of yarn, and I'm a size small for reference, so once again I will have all the measurements up on screen so that you can use that as an example. I just realized that you can't really see the bottom half of this top, so let me show you. It's got a little bow tie in the front that you can literally remove and put anywhere you like. So you can remove it, you can wear it just like without any tie, or you can put the tie in any hole on the mesh stitch. So if you wanted it a little bit up, you can even put it up here. So like that, and then you can tie a bow and it's really cute. It has a nice fit to it. Before you start crocheting, I want you to take a few measurements and write them down. The first measurement is going to be of your shoulders. So from one corner of your shoulders to the other, that's going to be measurement A. And then after that, I want you to measure how long you want your cardigan to be. So that's going to be measurement B. And then I also want you to measure from where you want the shoulder part to start. So this area right here, and that's going to be measurement C. I'm going to start this tutorial by giving you an idea of how we'll be crocheting this top. So the very first thing that we're going to start off with is making the back panel. The back panel is just going to be a really big square that fits your shoulders and the back. So the width is going to be the measurement of your shoulders, and the length will be just how long you want your top to be. Then after that, we're going to be making a small section for our shoulders on each side. Now, because our shoulders aren't straight, they're a little bit curved, we need to account for the fact that the top of our shoulders has a little bit of that curve. So we don't want the top to just be like a long straight piece. We want to add a little bit of shape to it. So there's going to be a little piece here on either side that's just going to be straight rows. After that, we're going to be making the two front panels, and this will be done one by one. So we're going to work on one side first, then the other side. So the front panel will have this little slope or this steep part over here that increases from small to big. And then once we reach the midway point or the halfway point where our front panel is half as long as our back panel, then we're just going to continue crocheting rows so that the rest of the front panel is straight. And that's what's going to make this little design at the front. After we're done with the back panel, the shoulder part, and the front panels, we're going to start by making the sleeves. So first we're going to join the front panel and the back panel together on the sides. But we're going to leave a little bit of space for the armhole, so we're not going to be joining this part together. Instead, we're going to start by making the sleeves directly from there. And that's basically the construction of the whole top. Afterwards, you can make a long string of chains and slip stitches, and you can insert them through the front of your cardigan, and you're going to have a bow. You can even make 2 of these and design a cardigan in a different way. The very first thing we're going to do is make a gauge swatch. This is to help us with the measurements because you want to make sure that all the time and effort you put into this top is actually worth it. So you don't want to get the wrong measurement for the top and then you can't even wear it. So we're going to start off by making a slip knot. That's how I like to make mine. And then you're going to chain 2 because we're going to be making foundation single crochets. So usually we make a long chain and then we single crochet into each of those chains. We're going to skip those steps and turn it into just one step, which is a foundation single crochet. So you've got 2 chains over here and you're going to turn the chain to the back side and you're going to have 3 loops, 1, 2, and 3, the one in the corner. You're going to go through this middle loop right over here. And then you're going to pull up a loop through it, pull up a loop again, and then finally pull through the last 2 loops like that, and that's going to be your very first single crochet. And to make more foundation single crochets, you're going to insert your hook at the bottom like this. So you're going to have the bottom stitch on your hook. You're going to pull up a loop again, and then complete the single crochet by pulling through both of the loops on your hook. So that's going to be your second single crochet. So this doesn't count. You've got 1, 2. So once again, you're going to insert your hook at the bottom stitch like that. Pull up a loop once, pull up a loop again, and you have to make sure that the second time you pull up a loop, it has to be a bit loose. And then you can yarn over and pull through both the loops on your hook, completing the single crochet. Let's do this one more time. So insert your hook through the bottom, pull up a loop once, make it a little bit loose, pull up a loop again, and then yarn over and pull through both the loops on your hook. Now I want you to go ahead and do this until the foundation single crochets are about 6 inches long. So here I've done a total of 27 foundation single crochets and this piece is about 6 inches long. So that's going to be the very first row that you're going to make for your back panel, and not this one specifically, but this is the first step that we're going to do after we figured out the measurements. Now I'm going to show you how to crochet rows of mesh stitches. So you start off by chaining 6. So to start a new row, you're going to chain 6 and then you're going to turn your work. Now another thing that I forgot to mention is that the total number of foundation single crochets you do have to be a multiple of 3. A multiple of 3 is whatever number is in the 3 times table. So for example, 3 times 9 is 27. So whatever number of foundation single crochets you do, this number has to be able to be divided by 3. For example, if your 6 inches are 28, then you can bring it up to 30. If your 6 inches are 22, you can bring it up to 24. So as long as the total number of foundation single crochets are a multiple of 3, you're going to be fine. So after you've chained 6 and turned your work, you're going to skip 2 stitches. So it's best if you look at it like this. This is my first chain, so we're not going to look at that. This is my first single crochet and my second single crochet, and this over here is my third single crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Insert your hook into it and single crochet. So that's how you're going to start a new round. Now here's the pattern that you're going to repeat for the rest of the row. You're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Skip 2 stitches. 1, 2. Insert your hook into the third stitch and single crochet. Repeat again. Chain 5. Skip 2 stitches. 1, 2, and single crochet into the third stitch. Go ahead and repeat this till the very end. I'm at the end of my row. I'm still repeating the same pattern, so I'm going to chain 5, skip 2 stitches, and single crochet into the third stitch. And that's going to be the end of your first row of mesh stitches. That's what that'll look like. Now, one mesh stitch is this one hole over here. So let's count how many mesh stitches we have in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, and 9. So in every row you should always have a total of 9 mesh stitches, or whatever number you have. So let's repeat the pattern again. To start a new row, you're going to chain 6, 5, and 6. Then you're going to turn your work. Now you're going to insert your hook into the mesh stitch like this and single crochet. Now we're going to repeat the same pattern as before. So we're going to chain 5, 3, 4, and 5. Insert our hook into the mesh stitch and single crochet. So from now on, it's pretty repetitive. Again, we're going to chain 5, insert our hook into the mesh stitch and single crochet. Go ahead and do this until the end of your row, and you're going to notice that your mesh stitch is forming. Chain 5 and then single crochet into the next mesh stitch. I single crocheted into the last mesh stitch to complete the row, and now I'm going to show you how to start another row. So we're going to chain 6 to start a new row, turn your work, single crochet into the first mesh stitch, and then repeat the same pattern as before. So chain 5, single crochet into the next stitch, chain 5 again, single crochet into the next stitch, and repeat until you're done with this row as well. It's normal for your work to curl like this. As long as you still have the same number of mesh stitches in every row, then you're not making any mistake and the curling will go away after a bit. So let's count again to make sure you're on the right track. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That means we're good to go. Now I want you to keep crocheting rows until this piece is much larger. So let's do 5 to 6 more rows of this. So I did a total of 7 rows. Now I would definitely recommend doing more than 7 rows, maybe even up to 6 inches until the piece is up to 6 inches long to get a more accurate measurement. But I'm a little bit impatient, so I'm just going to move on to the next step. So here I've done 27 foundation single crochets at the bottom and 7 rows of mesh stitches, and my work has stretched out a little bit. If yours hasn't, then that probably means that your foundation single crochets are too tight. And so when you start making the actual back panel, please make sure to loosen them up a little bit. Alright, now here comes the confusing math part. Remember the measurements of your shoulder, which was measurement A. I want you to take that measurement, so the measurement of your shoulder, and divide it by 4. So for me that was 15, and I'm going to divide that by 4, which is going to give me 3.75. Now keep this measurement in mind, and we're going to move on to the next measurement. So go ahead and get whatever you're measuring with, and I want you to take 4 inches on this and see how many mesh stitches can fit in 4 inches. So for me, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So don't measure down here because this part is stretched out. I want you to measure at the top or right down the middle of your piece. So we're going to take how many stitches can fit in 4 inches, and we're going to do 3.75, or the number that you got, times the number of stitches you can fit in 4 inches. So for me that was 5 stitches in 4 inches, which gave me 18.75. Now I'm just going to round it up because we can't have any decimals for the final measurement, so I'm just going to turn it into 19. So this number that you get over here is how many mesh stitches you should have in every row to make your back panel. So for me that means that in the back panel every row will have 19 mesh stitches. Now we need to calculate how many foundation single crochets we need to do to get this many mesh stitches. So let's do our last calculation. You're going to take the final number of mesh stitches that you got, and you're going to multiply it by 3. So that gives me 57. That means that to start my back panel, I need to do 57 foundation single crochets. And there we go. Now you know how to make your back panel. So I'm going to do a quick little recap, and then you can move on to making your own back panel. I'm going to start off by making a slip knot, and then you're going to foundation single crochet the number that you calculated. So for me that was 57. After you're done making your long line of foundation single crochets, you're going to move on to doing the mesh stitches just like how I showed you, so you can replay the previous part of this video. You're going to start the row for the mesh stitches by chaining 6, skip 2 stitches, and then single crochet into the 3rd stitch, and then you're going to chain 5, skip 2 stitches, single crochet into the next stitch, chain 5, skip 2, single crochet into the 3rd, and you're going to repeat it to the end of the row. After that, you can make sure that you have the number of mesh stitches that you calculated. So for me that would be 19. So after 57 foundation single crochets, I should have 19 mesh stitches. And then once you've got the number of mesh stitches that you want in your first row, you just continue making rows until the back panel is as long as you want it to be, which was, I think, measurement B. So I've already shown you how to crochet rows of mesh stitches, so you can replay that, but I'm also going to have the written pattern up on screen. And now go ahead and crochet your back panel. If you're still confused, think of this as like a mini back panel. So let's pretend together, let's pretend that I did 57 foundation single crochets, and then I've got 19 mesh stitches in every row. So just keep that in mind as you're replaying the video, and just follow along the same steps to start a new row and the same steps to continue crocheting the rows, and you'll be good to go. Once you're done making the back panel, I want you to note down how many mesh stitches there are. So not how many chains or not how many single crochets, how many loops of mesh stitches, and how many total rows you did without counting the single crochet row. Before you start making the front panels, I want you to keep in mind measurement C, because we're going to be directly working from the back panel. We're going to work only on measurement C and then build some length for the shoulders. And then we're going to directly continue by making this front panel. So the width of it, or how wide it is measurement C. And then the length, how long you make it, could be 9 to 10 rows or 3.5 to 4 inches. You can, of course, make it longer if you need to before you start the actual front panel. I already did one side because I wanted to make sure that the pattern worked, but don't get intimidated. The steps are really straightforward, and I'll explain everything you need to know. We're going to be following the next 3 steps, which are going to be the part for the shoulder, the rest of the front panel, and then sleeves. Wherever you've ended your back panel, that's where you're going to directly start the top part for the shoulder. So whether your yarn is on this side or this side, so wherever you've got your hook, that's where you're going to continue from. Don't fasten off, don't end your work, just directly continue with the steps that I'm going to show you. So if you're making your very first side, whether it's on the left side or the right side, you'll already have your yarn in any right or left corner. So you don't need to attach new yarn, you just directly continue working from the yarn that's already on your hook. But if you're working on the next side or the second side, then you will need to attach the yarn, and here's how you're going to do that. So just get your loop of yarn and you're going to slide it through the corner mesh stitch like that and secure it with a knot. Now if you're confused and you don't really want to continue with the yarn that you already have, you can just fasten that off and you can attach a new yarn like me. Going to double knot it just to secure it in place. And now we're just going to repeat the steps. Measurement C for me will be around 6 mesh stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm only going to be working into these 6 stitches over here. You're going to be repeating the same pattern. So we're still going to be chaining 6 to start our row. And then you're going to single crochet into the very first mesh stitch. Then we're going to continue the same pattern, so we're going to chain 5 and go into the next mesh stitch. So I have to do this a total of 6 times, 3, 4, 5, and then single crochet into the next mesh stitch, and I'm going to meet you back once I'm done making measurement C. So there I've done 6 mesh stitches, so now I'm ready to start my second row for the shoulder. I'm going to do a total of 9 rows. I already did my first, I'm going to start my second. And once again, you're repeating the same pattern to start a new row. You're going to chain 6, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then you're going to turn your work. And you're going to single crochet into your first mesh stitch. And then repeat the pattern where you chain 5, 3, 4, 5, and then continue single crocheting into every mesh stitch until the end of this row. So once again, you're repeating the exact same pattern that you used for the back panel, but you're just doing it in a smaller section to build some length for the shoulder. The pattern that you're repeating is that you chain 5, and then you single crochet into the mesh stitch. And whenever you want to start a new row, you chain 6, turn your work, and then you insert your hook into the first mesh stitch and single crochet. You have to make sure that you're doing whatever number you started with for the shoulder row, so don't let the mesh stitches increase. I did 6 mesh stitches for my shoulder row, so I have to continue doing 6 mesh stitches for each of the other rows for the shoulder. 3, 4, 5. Now go ahead and continue until you've done 9 rows or 10 rows or up to 3.5 to 4 inches long. Once you're done with 9 rows, this is what your work should look like. It's just going to be a little section for the shoulders. It's going to go right on top like that. Now, whatever row you end on, you have to make sure that your row is ending on the inside of your work or the part where you're gonna have this curve. So your last row for the shoulder part should not end over here. It should be on this side. So if your hook or right now on this side, you have to do another row to bring it to the middle or remove a row until your hook and the yarn that you're working with is facing the inside of your cardigan. Now we're going to start making increases so that we can have a nice little curve right over here. So remember when I told you to write down how many mesh stitches you have in your back panel and how many rows you have? We're going to be using that to decide how many increases or how many rows we need to do for this part over here. So for me, since I have 41 rows, I just divided that in half. So I want to do 20 rows until I reach this part over here. This slope is going to be made up out of 20 rows for me. And since I have a total of 19 stitches, I need to divide that in half, but 19 can't be divided by 2. So I just took 20 and I divided it by half and I got 10. So over here, by the time I reach my 20th row, I should have 10 stitches, because then the rest of this will just continue with just 10 stitches over and over again. So I'm starting off with 6 stitches. So that's how many stitches I have in my shoulder part, and I need to bring it up to 10. So I need to insert 4 increases over these 20 rows. So here's a look at what I decided to do for this section right over here. I'm going to be doing a total of 20 rows because row 21 onwards, I'll just be doing back and forth, no increases, nothing else. So exactly what we did for the shoulder part. So in row 1, I'm going to add an increase, which will bring my stitch count up to 7. Then for row 3, 4, and 5, I'll just continue that stitch count. I won't add any more increases. Then this is a 5. Sorry, it looks like that. Then in row 5, I'll add another increase, which will bring my stitch count up to 8. And then for rows 6, 7, and 8, I'll just continue doing that same stitch count without any increases. Then row 9, I'll add another increase, which will bring my stitch count up to 9. Then for rows 10, 11, and 12, I'll just continue that stitch count. It might seem a little bit confusing right now, but it's actually pretty easy once you start doing it. So depending on how many rows you need to do, you need to figure out where you're adding those increases. If you want more of like a gradual slope, like a smaller slope, then you can follow a pattern like me where you add an increase every 4th row. But if you want something a little bit more steep, like something that increases a lot, then you can add an increase every other row. So you could do, in row 1, you could do an increase, row 2, no increase, row 3, another increase, row 4, no increase. So increase row, no increase, increase row, no increase, increase row. So that's what's going to build your slope. We're starting directly from the shoulders. So once again, I did 9 rows for my shoulder, and now this part is facing inwards, not the outside edge, the inside edge where we're going to be making that slope. I'm going to reset or restart my row count. So I'm not going to go row 10, 11, 12. I'm just going to start again from row 1. And here's how we're going to do an increase. So you're going to start your first row for the panel just like normal. So you're going to chain 6, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then you're going to turn your work and you're going to insert your first single crochet into the first mesh stitch. So we're doing the same step. Now here's how we're going to do an increase. To make an increase, you're just going to insert another single crochet, another mesh stitch inside the same first one. So you're going to chain 5 again, 3, 4, and 5, but instead of going into the next mesh stitch, you're going to go back into the same one, and this is going to be your increase. So an increase is basically when you add another mesh stitch to your row to increase the total stitch count. And now we're going to continue like normal. So we're going to chain 5, go into the next mesh stitch and single crochet, chain 5 again, and then go into the next mesh stitch, and I want you to continue the row like normal, repeating the pattern on screen. So don't do another increase, you're just going to repeat this to the end of this row. And there you go, that's going to be row 1 with an increase. Now for me, I'm going to do row 2, 3, and 4 without an increase. So I'm going to repeat the same steps that we always do for the rows. So I'm going to chain 6, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Turn my work and single crochet into the first stitch. So I'm not doing any more increases in rows 2 to 4. So that means I'm just repeating the same mesh stitch pattern that we have been for the previous steps. Once you come to the end of your second row over here, you have to go through both of the mesh stitches. So I'm going to go through the first one. Then I'm going to chain 5 again because we can't forget to go through the extra one that we made, so the one in the corner as well. And that's going to be row 2. Now I'm just going to repeat the same steps for row 3 and 4, and you're going to notice that your work is going to slightly decrease like that. So once again, same steps as before. Chain 6 to start your new row. Turn your work and insert a mesh stitch. Chain 5 and repeat the same pattern. So this time there's no increase. That means I'm just going to go into the next mesh stitch and continue like normal. So chain 5, go into the next mesh stitch, and I'm going to complete row 3 and 4, and then I'll show you what to do next. And I'm done with 4 rows. Now once again, please remember that before you add an increase, your hook always has to be on the inside of your work. Don't touch your straight edge over here. So there should be no increases. All the increases should be only on one side or the inside of your cardigan. So look, this part should stay straight, and then all of your increases should be over here. So before you add an increase, just make sure that your yarn is on the inside of your work. Since I've reached row 5, I'm going to be doing another increase row. So here are the steps you're going to repeat for every increase row. You're going to start off by chaining 6, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then you're going to turn your work and insert a single crochet into your first mesh stitch. Now we're going to make an increase, so you're going to chain 5 and insert another single crochet back into that same mesh stitch, and that's going to be your increase. Once you're done with that, you're going to continue the row like normal, just doing the same steps that we've been doing before. So chain 5, single crochet into the next mesh stitch, chain 5 again, single crochet into the next mesh stitch, and do this until the end of this row. Now that I'm done with row 5, it's increasing even more. I'm going to continue doing the same steps without any increases for rows 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to turn my work and just continue. So I don't want to repeat the same steps again and again and again, but they're going to be up on screen. So again, for row 6, 7, and 8, I'm not going to do any increases. I'm just going to chain 5 and then single crochet into the mesh stitches that I already have. So by row 5, I've brought my stitch count up to 8. So in the rows 6, 7, and 8, I have a total of 8 mesh stitches to go through. And once you reach the end, I'm going to show you one more time in case you're still confused. So you're going to have these 2 loops that you made. So you're going to have your increase and then the loop at the side. So you have to go through both of them. So you're going to chain 5, go through 1, so single crochet through 1, and then chain 5 again, and single crochet through the second one. Don't forget to go through it, don't skip it. And once you're done with that, you continue like normal. So you chain 6 to start a new row. Don't forget to go through it. So you have to single crochet through every mesh stitch to make sure that your stitch count remains the same. Your stitch count or the total number of mesh stitches won't change unless you add an increase. Now I'm going to be starting row 9, and in row 9 I have to do another increase. So I single crocheted into the first mesh stitch, chained 5 again, and single crocheted back into that first mesh stitch one more time to make my increase. And now I'm going to continue row 9 like normal. So now from row 10 to row 16, I'm just going to continue the same stitch count. I'm not going to do any more increases. I'm just going to keep doing these stitches from row 10 to 16. Then in row 17, I'll add another increase, and then that will be my last increase row. So after I'm going to be done with row 17, which is going to be my last increase row, I'm just going to continue doing rows until I reach a total of 41. So then from row 18 to 41, I'm just going to have the same stitch count. So no more increases after that. Here's a look at my progress so far. So I had my 9 rows for the shoulder up there. So this section is the part for the shoulder. And then after that, from row 1 to 10, this is what my work looks like. So remember, all your increases should be only when your hook is facing inside the cardigan. so that the other side can stay a little bit straight. Don't do any increases on this side. I'm going to continue until I reach the halfway point, so up until row 20, which is going to be somewhere over here. And this is why I wanted to finish one side before I showed you how to do the side itself, so I can show you some examples. So up till here is row 20, and then after row 20, the steps are just repeating again and again and again. So it's making it a little bit straight. This is what my work looks like after I'm done with my 20 rows. So in row 17, I had one more increase, then I just did 3 more rows to make it up to row 20, just to show you what it will look like. Now we're going to make this bottom part, which is just repeating the same steps over and over again. So I ended up with 10 mesh stitches in each row. So that means that from row 21 till row 41, I'm going to have 10 mesh stitches in every row, no more increases at all. So let's continue. I'm going to show you one more time what steps you're going to be repeating. So to start a new row, you're going to chain 6. And then once you're done chaining 6, you're just going to turn your work. Single crochet into the first mesh stitch. Chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Single crochet into the next mesh stitch. And repeat. So you're just going to repeat chaining 5. And single crochet into the next mesh stitch. And these are the steps that I'm going to keep repeating until I'm done with all 41 rows, so that the front panel is the same size as the back panel. Go ahead and continue crocheting rows of mesh stitches after you're done making the slope or the steep part of the front side. You don't have to do any more increases. So once you're done with that, just keep crocheting rows until your front side has the same number of rows as your back side. I was already at row 20, so now I'm continuing with row 21 till row 41. I'm done with 41 rows, and this is what my work looks like. Make sure that when you're done with your last row, the yarn is facing here. And now we're going to start directly joining this side to this side over here. Before you start joining, I want you to see how long you want the armhole to be. So for me, I'm going to make it 6.5 inches. So these 6.5 inches at the top, I'm going to leave them open for my arm to go through, and then we're going to directly do the sleeves from here. So I'm going to join from the bottom. I'm going to start joining these two, go all the way up, and then I'm going to leave about 6.5 inches over here and not join this side together. You're going to have your foundation single crochet row at the bottom, so don't join into this because we're going to be making another row of single crochets for this. So there's many different ways to join it. You can either sew it together with a plastic needle, or you can slip stitch the sides together. I'm going to show you both ways. So I'm going to get this mesh stitch to line up with this one, and I'm going to insert my hook through the edge as close as I can get and slip stitch. So the first method is to just slip stitch and join all the way up. So now I'm going to go through any loop in the chain and then go through the same loop on the other piece, and then slip stitch to join this together. I'm going to do this all the way up. So I'm going to go through the loops of 2 chains. Make sure you're grabbing the loops on both sides. That's how you're going to join the 2 pieces, and slip stitch. But then you also have to make sure that your slip stitches are not too tight, otherwise your work will bunch up. Then when I reach this little knot-like place, I'm going to go right through the middle of the knot and then the middle of the other knot on the other piece. And same thing, you're just going to slip stitch it together. If you're slip stitching the piece together, this is what your work will look like, and you're just going to continue doing this all the way up. But don't forget to leave that space for your armhole. But if you're like me and you prefer sewing with your needle, here's how you're going to do that. So first I'm just going to cut a long string of yarn, and I'm going to pull my hook through. So you can slip stitch a few of the stitches and then you can just continue sewing. Then I'm going to attach my yarn to my needle and secure it with a knot. And then I'm going to repeat the same steps that I was doing, but instead of slip stitching, I'm going to be using my needle. So I'm going to go through a loop in the chain, and if you're sewing, this is going to be much easier to do. And pull. Then since my yarn is on the right side, I'm going to insert my needle from the right side. Go through the chains and pull. Now my needle is on the left side, so I'm going to insert my hook from the left side. Remember, the goal is to go as close to the edge as you possibly can, And don't pull too tight, otherwise your work is going to bunch up. And there you go, you're going to repeat this all the way to the top, but don't forget to leave some space for the armhole. Make sure that you're lining up the stitches on both sides. So for example, this and this lined up, this and this one and this. So make sure you're not accidentally going too far up. For example, joining this part to this stitch over here, because then you're going to have this gap. Once you're done joining it together, you can fasten off and end your work. And here I left a hole for my arm. Once you're done, you can just flip it to the right side. So this is the side that you can actually wear out because it's cleaner. Now we're going to start by directly making the sleeves over here. Now for my armhole, I want to have a total of 17 stitches all the way around because that's what I figured out on the other side. So what you can do is just count how many stitches you have in your armhole. So 1, 2, 3, count all the way around, and those are the stitches that you're going to have in every row for the sleeve. There's going to be no increasing, no decreasing, it's just going to be a straight sleeve. So go ahead and insert your hook, and we're going to attach our yarn with a knot. So slide the yarn through any one of the mesh stitches and make a double knot to secure it in place. Insert your hook under, and we're going to start by chaining 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to be doing the same pattern, but instead of doing rows, we're going to be working in rounds. I'm going to show you what to do. After this, you're just going to single crochet into the next mesh stitch. And then I like getting a stitch marker and just marking this very first mesh stitch, just so I know that when I come back around, this is where I have to start the next round. Now we're going to chain 5 again, and you're going to repeat this pattern all the way around. So chain 5, single crochet into the next mesh stitch, chain 5 again, single crochet into the next mesh stitch. So I came all the way around, just repeating the same pattern that we've been doing, and this is going to be my 17th mesh stitch. To end around, you're going to insert your hook into the very first chain of the first mesh stitch that you did in the previous round. So you're going to insert your hook into the chain, but don't just go into the loop like that. Try to find the bottom loop or the loop under the chain. So make sure that you're grabbing onto 2 loops of the chain. Sorry, the camera is moving too much. And then you're going to slip stitch to end your first round for the sleeve. Now to start the next round, you're going to repeat the same steps for every round. So to start a new round, you're going to turn your work this way, and you're going to slip stitch into the mesh stitch, and then chain 5, 3, 4, and 5. And continue the pattern all the way around by single crocheting into the next mesh stitch. Since this is your first stitch of the next round, you're just going to mark it with a stitch marker so that you know when your round is over. And that's it. Now we're just going to repeat this pattern all the way around. So you're going to chain 5 and single crochet into the next mesh stitch, chain 5 again, and single crochet into the next stitch. Repeat all the way around until you come back over here. Now I've come all the way around, and I had my stitch marker into the very first chain. So there's 5 chains in the mesh stitch, and then you should have put your stitch marker into the very first chain, and that's where we're going to end this round. So you're going to insert your hook into that very first chain, try to get both of the loops, and then you're going to slip stitch to end this round. And then to start a new round, you're going to turn your work, slip stitch into the very first mesh stitch, the one that's closest to you or the one that you just made. Then you're going to chain 5 and you're going to start the next round, and then single crochet into the next mesh stitch. Before you continue with the round, don't forget to get your stitch marker and mark the very first chain of this first mesh stitch of the round. It's like a little tongue twister. And now you're going to continue all the way around. So the pattern you're going to repeat is you're going to chain 5, single crochet into the mesh stitch, and repeat all the way around. You have to make sure that you always have the same number of mesh stitches in every round. So for me, that's 17. So go ahead and count all of your mesh stitches and then make sure that you have the same in every round. If you don't have the same in every round, then you're probably unintentionally or accidentally making an increase somewhere. So you can count as you go and then see where you're doing that. If you don't have the same number of stitches, if it's 1 or 2 less, then that means that you're accidentally skipping some of the mesh stitches. So just make sure that you're being careful and keeping count. So go ahead and do as many rounds as you need to do to make the sleeve as long as you want. This can be just a short sleeve, it can be a mid sleeve, or it can be a long sleeve. As you go along, you're going to notice that you have some pretty neat edges if you keep the right stitch count. I'm all done with the sleeve. I did a total of 46 rounds, so depending on how long you want your sleeve to be, you can do more or less rounds, but 46 rows was approximately 18 inches. Once you're done, you can turn your work. So I slip stitch into the last mesh stitch to complete the round, and now I've turned my work, and we're going to be making a nice little border around the sleeve to make it a little bit neater. That's going to look something like this, and it's just single crochets all the way around. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. So here's the comparison without the border, with the border. In every mesh stitch, you're going to insert 4 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're just inserting your hook into the hole like that. Then in the single crochet right over here, you're going to go into it and insert 1 single crochet. And that's the pattern that you're going to repeat all the way around. So in every mesh stitch, you're going to do 4 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then once you reach your single crochet, insert your hook into the top of the single crochet and do 1 single crochet. So let's do this one more time, then you can repeat it all the way around. We're going to start off by doing 4 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're going to insert our hook and do another single crochet into the stitch. Once you've come all the way around, we're going to end our work. So I'm going to insert my hook into the very first single crochet that we did at the beginning, and I'm going to slip stitch. Then you can chain 1. Then cut the yarn and pull, and you're all done with the sleeves. So that's one side completed. I've done both the sides, so this is what my work looks like. Once you're done with your first side, I want you to rewatch the video and repeat the same exact steps onto the other side as well. What we're going to do now is replicate this single crochet at the bottom, and we're going to do it all along the bottom edge. Then we're going to single crochet all the way up and single crochet all the way around and around, go all the way down again till the very end, and then you'll finally be done once you've joined it here. So now you're going to find the bottom of your yarn. I would recommend starting on the bottom left side, so the part where I showed you we were going to start in the previous clip. Go ahead and get your yarn, and we're first going to attach the yarn into this very first single crochet over here. So insert your hook there. This is your front panel, the side that doesn't have the foundation single crochets, and this is the bottom of your back panel where you do have these single crochets. So you're going to attach your yarn over there, and I'm just going to chain 1 and secure it. Now I'm going to single crochet into this corner right over here, so this stitch. I'm going to try and work over the ends as I do this. And there we go, now we're ready to start working. Here's the pattern that we're going to repeat all the way till the end of the front panel. You're going to do 3 single crochets into the mesh stitch. So this is very similar to what we did for the sleeve, but for the sleeve we did 4 single crochets, and for the bottom part we're going to do 3 single crochets just to make it a little bit less wavy. I want it to be a little bit straighter, not too much curve. So that's 3 single crochets. Then you're going to insert your hook into the stitch and do 1 single crochet. And that's the pattern you're going to repeat all the way up. So 1, 2, and 3. Then insert your hook into the single crochet stitch and do another single crochet. In this last corner over here, I'm going to put 4 single crochets just because it is curving a little bit like that. And then I'm going to insert my hook into the side stitch over here and a single crochet. So now we're going to repeat this pattern that we just did all the way up. So let's do this. I'm going to insert 3 single crochets, 2, or actually I think 2 is enough over here, and then I'm going to single crochet into the stitch. So you really have to kind of see how many single crochets can even fit inside your mesh stitch. So this part's a little bit different. Now over here I'm going to do 2 single crochets again, 2. I could do 3, but then I think that's going to curve it out a little bit too much, so I'm going to stick with 2 and then single crochet into the stitch. So once again, this top is more of like a go with the flow kind of situation. I've tried to explain it as much as I can, but then at the end of the day, you kind of have to add like your own things into it. So if you do have space, you can do 3 single crochets in between. If you have it like me and you don't have space, you can do just 2 single crochets in between. But yeah, the basic pattern is that you have to single crochet into the mesh stitches as well as the stitch at the corner over here. Here's a closer look at the border. I decided to make the ties a separate piece because I wanted to be able to adjust where I attach the tie. So all I did was single crochet all the way up, just like I showed you, around the edges, inserting 2 single crochets and then 1 single crochet into the stitch. I went all the way around and even on the back part, and I just kept going and single crocheting all the way around until I came back down here. Then I inserted 4 single crochets into this corner, then 3 single crochets all the way down, so the same steps that we did on this side. And once I reach this corner over here, I'm going to show you how I ended my work. Once you've gone all around, here's how you're going to end your work. Just insert your hook into whatever stitch is next. So I've got my first single crochet of the back panel on the other side, just whatever corner you can find, and you're going to slip stitch into it like that, chain 1, and then you can get your scissor and just cut the yarn, pull and tighten, and you're done. Now I'm going to show you how to make the ties. The actual ties have to be really long, like about 26 to 30 inches long. I'm just going to show you a small sample so you can see what I'm doing. So for right now, I'm just going to chain 10. But again, please keep in mind that you actually have to chain way more for your ties depending on how long you want it to be. Once you've chained the length that you want for the ties, you're going to turn your chain to the back. So we're going to skip the first chain. So you're not going to do anything into the first chain. Now there's 3 loops, 1, 2, and 3. So this middle loop right over here, that's where we're going to be inserting our hook. And then you're going to slip stitch. So once again, keep your work turned to the back, insert your hook into the middle loop like this. If this is too hard, you can just slip stitch into the chains like normal, but this is going to make it neater. So 1, 2, 3, I want you to go through this middle loop right over here and slip stitch. And you're going to get this nice little cord. And there you go, that's going to be the finished top. This is what mine looks like after blocking. I would definitely recommend using some warm water, and I'm going to try and put down some notes of other ways you can steam or block your work if you don't have a steamer like I do. And then here are the ties. I can just put them through the holes over here and then tie it into a little bow, and you're all done with your top.